Cool. So, welcome to the Town of Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on February the 6th, 2024. Can we have a call to order, please?
Yes, Bill Marin.
Yo.
Kyle Oberketter.
Here.
Eric Bozick.
Here.
Rob Levitt.
Yes.
Cindy Hirschfield is absent. Katie Hostetler.
Here.
Mike Horvath.
Here.
Bob Kaplan.
Here.
Ben Firestein.
Present.
Excellent, you have a quorum.
Excellent. First order of item then is to approve the minutes from December 5th of 2023. Does anybody have any comments, changes? And if not, can we entertain a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
First from Rob, second from Bill. All in favor? Aye. Excellent.
Thank you.
Off and rolling, great. The next item then is a continued public hearing on 168 Original Road, a minor subdivision application and associated land use requests.
And staff is recommending continuing the public hearing to March 5th. The applicant is working on adjustments and changed drawings, and he's not ready for the review yet.
Do we want to vote, is a vote to continue?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Great.
Motion to continue.
We have a motion to continue. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Rob. In this case, all in favor? Aye.
Great.
Motion is continued until March 5th. Great. Next item then is an update on the Basalt Forward 2030 Affordable Housing Project. I'll let staff take that when they're ready.
Yeah, okay. So this is, yeah, an update on the 2030 Basalt Forward Affordable Housing Initiative. And so the background here is that in 2020, the voters approved a bond initiative for affordable housing activities in general, not a specific project, for $6 million. And the town has spent about $800,000 on 4 lots in Stotts Mill previously, so we have a balance of about 5.2 available. So we are working through some other activities in the background right now, which you may be familiar with. We're working on building 2 of the homes on 2 of the lots in Stotts Mill. We have a request for proposals for design build services for those 2 units. And I think they are due the middle of March, so we'll see what those come in at. And then separate from that, we have an RFP out right now for design services, only for design for the rugby lot adjacent parcel that the town owns, which is just under a half an acre. It's in between the lakeside townhomes and the buildings where our park services are at the rugby field. The town owns that property, so we're just looking right now to get design services and architectural drawings done, so that we can be competitive for a state grant to actually construct the project. You need to have projects that are shovel-ready to be competitive for those grants. So we need to take that.
Recording in progress.
Sweet. So we need to take that through design services and entitlements. It'll be a PUD that we need to go through there. So that'll come back to you multiple times. You'll get to be in the process all of the ways, but that's out there right now. And then lastly, we are waiting to hear back, cross your fingers, about a state grant for design and engineering services to look at what can be done at our parcel across the street from Takaw on Lewis Lane. That's about 2.5 acres. So, and that property would be potentially a combined daycare and affordable housing units there. So looking to get the soft costs covered mostly with a state grant and then move forward. We'll know more about that in March. So those construction projects are their own bucket of things, and they're not really half of them are not construction, they're just design right now, but yeah.
Next to the rugby field, would that be a multi-unit apartment project?
Yeah.
6 or 8 units, something along those lines?
Yeah, 8 to 15, whatever fits. Yep. All right, okay. So therefore, here we are with $5.2 million. We're gonna spend some on some of these soft costs. 5.2 is not gonna build any of the two projects that I just talked about. It will help build the 2 units over at Stotts Mill. And hopefully we'll also get bond monies for that as well. But other ways we can help promote affordable housing in town that are not construction. So that is this discussion and this presentation about what is inappropriately labeled on this title slide as buy-down programs, when really it should be called deed restriction incentive programs. And the reason for that is because these are not real estate transactions. A buy-down program would be a real estate transaction to purchase a unit. All of the learning curves right with you. All right, so I'm going to walk you through a couple of existing deed restriction incentive programs that exist in the state now. And this is a presentation that Bach recently sat through and we had a nice discussion about. And they have directed staff to continue on and start doing more in-depth research on what a program like this could look like for Basalt. So before we get into that, we'll just kind of give you the background on what's been going on in general for these. So the Vail and Deed program was the first program of this type. It started in 2017, and frankly, Vail had some very specific apartment buildings that they wanted to acquire and not let those go free market, so their program started there. Their program is the most clear-cut. There are no income restrictions, there are no household size restrictions, there's no sales appreciation cap. It's just they wanted to get as many units as possible, and the only requirement is that it's resident occupied, somebody who's employed and resident occupied. So that's pretty straightforward, and that's a pretty easy thing for qualifications because you just need to submit your W-2 and prove that you're working somewhere in the Vail area and owning it. What happened there is it was very, very successful, and this little graph on here shows that since 2017 to 2023 is when their data obviously is up to date. They've spent $12.6 million. They have acquired 175 units, are deed restricted from that. And the average cost per deed restriction, I mean, this is spread out over many years, is $72,000. They have a lot of data on their program, and it's available on their website. It's really neat to see that at the beginning, they had a lot of money, they spent a lot, they had a lot of people that were interested. You can be a property owner and apply for the deed restriction incentive. And what that does, if you own a unit and let's say you need to replace the roof, you can apply and agree to place a deed restriction on your property, and they write you a check based on a percentage of market value, and you can use that to replace your roof, you can use it to pay down your credit cards, you can use it to put new carpet in your house, you can use it however you want. Just when that unit sells again, it's now deed restricted and goes only to somebody who's working or, only somebody who's working in the Vail area. So a lot of people were interested in this because similar to Basalt, Vail has had a lot of aging properties, and getting some cash flow in was really attractive. It's worked out really well. Over time, the number of units that they've been buying has continued to decrease because some of that inventory has been bought up, amongst other reasons. But that's kind of the overall, just really open, and they've not really changed their program. It's been working for them, and they've had it. They also have, I believe, a long-term financing mechanism that they're always replenishing their affordable housing coffer with. And that's something that obviously the town of Basalt does not have, so we'll talk about that too. So that's Vail.
Sorry, so how do they replenish that?
I think they have a sales tax.
It's from sales tax over there.
But that's a little tidbit for Vail in particular, I need to double check. It could be from their rep too.
When the property is sold, is it on the free market with a deed restriction, or is it limited to?
It's on the free market with a deed restriction.
Huh.
So in Vail, the way it's been working out is that it's still market forces that determine it. So an employee still, they're not, employees there are still not buying $5 million houses, so it kind of naturally suppresses the value and the sales price. And because a lot of these at the beginning of the program are older, they sold at reasonable rates.
But did it say $86 a square foot?
It's a gross average from 2017 to now.
For the payment of the
Yeah, because
restriction, for the incentive of
you
it.
can,
For the
you
incentive.
can request a $70,000 check.
Mhm.
They'll write you a $70,000 check, but you just have a restriction, and then when you go to sell it, you can still sell it for free market. You're just restricted who you can sell it to.
Is that true? You're not restricted to the price at which it sells?
It's free market.
Not in Vail, no.
Bail.
It's just resident occupied.
So the 70,000 is part of the incentive to join the program.
It's up to you to request what you want, and it's a negotiation.
Mhm.
So you could ask for $1 million, but again, what they're saying is the average they're paying per house is 70 grand to put a
Is that a
restriction.
loan until the property sells?
No, it's just to,
It's a one-time payment to put this deed restriction
Yeah.
on, say you're gonna sell it to someone local.
who works, yeah.
Okay, and then that
Ah.
comes off the sales price?
No,
No,
no, you literally just get a $70,000 check, but you're saying that there is potential that it maybe sells for less because the qualified people have less money.
Right.
Right? And so that's what you're basically
Is
playing.
there any research to show if they sold at a lower price later on, or if they're staying in the market?
it's a good question. No, I haven't dug in that deep yet. But I think you're gonna find some of these other programs really interesting too. Yes.
How many of them have sold
Yeah.
in the last 6 years?
Hmm. That's a good one. That's good. We can look that up.
Okay.
Yeah, out of the 180 whatever units.
Hmm.
Sure.
Some of them are also rentals.
No, that's what they're paying for, I think.
Yeah, so some of them are also rentals. So you can have an employer that it ends up buying, that has 5 units, gets the incentive, and then rents out as well. Their program is really fluid. There's a lot of things there. I think
Very
let me talk you through the other couple here, because they all start to ratchet down after this. Okay, so here's just one more slide on Vail. Bless you. From 2017, they were paying, about $65,000 for a 1-bedroom unit to get the deed restriction on there, and that kind of value sort of held for them for a while. And you can see on this little summary here that the 2 bedrooms certainly increased in value and went from 70 grand up to 138, and so on. There are a lot of nuances in this. I think it's just more out of curiosity, like how much are people paying for these things? What was the sweet spot here? What this graph doesn't tell you is, some of the units were newer, some of the units were older, and that's how they negotiated some of the numbers there. But for me, in looking at this, I just wanted to see, like, what was the top end? What are we in for? And if we were just for easy, fun numbers to follow exactly this Vail option, and we decided to do this with $1 million out of our bond monies, then we're looking at 8 units, maybe 10, depending on the size of the units that come in. So that's just something to have in the back of your mind. The miniature graph over there, which I don't expect anybody to read, is all of the data about all of the units they've bought. It's just kind of, they have a pretty robust.
Does it go all the way to gypsum when they say Vail? Do you know, is it like the whole,
No,
where's the?
I think it ends, Avon has its own program. So I think it's really
Oh, so
within
this is just
town limits.
legitimately almost in Vail.
Yeah, town limits, I believe. All right, so then you get to Avon, Mikasa Avon, and I don't know why they named it that, but I will share with you that because I get asked that every time I bring this slide up, the Western Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, that's our new kind of thing in the valley here, is trying to come up with a name for a program they're trying to work on. And what came up in a recent work session with them is that words like good deeds or indeed don't translate to Spanish well. And so I am suspect that Avon figured that out early on and named their program Mi Casa, just as, an interesting factoid. Their program is a little bit different. It really focuses on, these are their words, focuses on the missing middle. It can be owned by any Eagle County employee, so they don't have to just be employees in Avon. And then they have a few more restrictions, which some of them just kind of make sense. I think they're lessons learned, like you can't own another property. This is the one property you own, this is it, move on, so that you don't have people owning multiple properties.
And how do you rent, then how would you rent your property?
They have it, you have to own it for a certain amount of time, and then you can rent out, like you can rent out a room, or
So
you
it's
can
more of a
rent out the unit, yeah. And for a lot of deed-restricted properties, like in APCHA, for example, you're not allowed to rent out a bedroom.
Technically.
Technically. So this kind of changes that a little bit. They also made the requirement that buyers have 3% down payment for their property so that they're not relying on this incentive for their down payment. And that's in part because they learned throughout the process that people were coming to the table to get their mortgage and then they couldn't get approved because they didn't have cash. So just kind of figuring those things out a little bit. They made a maximum financial incentive of $100,000. And I think that's just to like maximize the funds that they had available and so that you're not getting more and more expensive requests going on. And that's the depth of what I know about their program.
Can I ask,
Mhm.
if you can only own one property,
How do you rent out your property?
if you're a business owner and you want housing for your employees, is there a provision for that, or you're excluded?
I am not sure that this program allows businesses to own. Some of them do and some of them explicitly do not. I
So
don't-
Vail, we think, does, but this one does not.
Right.
Is that, can you own a property in Grand Junction or somewhere outside of Eagle County, or is it's totally limited that this has to be your one and only property?
I am not totally sure. I'm gonna guess that it's probably here because there's only so much research a staff member could do to see if you owned a property in the whole country.
Yeah.
And just rely on you being honest.
Is this the same, any appreciation cap or anything, or is this?
No appreciation cap. So really that the market, the audience that you're selling to, there's a threshold that's gonna make your sales
Yeah, I
price
just
go.
didn't know, because the Breck one obviously has the appreciation cap.
Yeah. Mhm.
So the intent of this is really not so much to house local employees, though it is to a certain extent, but is to keep local people living in units.
To keep local people living in units. And one thing here too is, this kind of changes the word from creating affordable housing to preserving it. So, you could say in the Elk Run neighborhood, there are certainly a number of homes there that have, probably a majority of them that have employees, people that work in the area that live there, or people that have retired that have worked in the valley their whole lives that are retired, and their house is kind of like a naturally occurring affordable housing. But these houses are always at the risk of being flipped and now becoming, remodeled, redone, $3 million houses, and now that inventory's gone. So this is a way to, just kind of change the narrative a little bit to preserving it, rather than having that gentrification kind of overcome the whole neighborhood.
So these properties end up with the same deed restriction Vail has?
Similar,
Similar?
with a couple more
I
rules.
would love to get a rough idea of what that does to the prices.
Mhm.
I'm sure the Realtor board over there are people who've looked at it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
could we get our inventory, would it do enough to keep the the Willis homes affordable
neighborhood,
for a local, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because my subdivision is well over half second homes now.
Already?
Mm-hmm.
Southside's turned completely.
That was quick.
But technically, I mean, what you're doing though is you are, by having that data, what is a duty for you? Because what it's telling you then is that there are people who work, all it tells you is there's people that work within the certain amount of restriction within the county or the limit that can afford to buy this home.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because you still have people that are paying market rate, so that,
The
you know,
jo- there's-
regardless of your property doubling or tripling in value, and you still can't afford anything else because that's the market rate.
Well, the intent of this is not affordable housing. It's to keep people, local people in the house.
In that,
Correct.
yes.
To keep them from being second homes.
Local
That's why I
workers.
like this idea of the
Well, no,
missing
no,
middle.
it doesn't, you know,
You have to work, the Vail one, you have to work a minimum of 30 hours a week.
I know you have to work, but that doesn't mean it's affordable. There's nothing about this that says it is affordable.
But what it's telling you though is that there are enough high-paying jobs then that can afford an increase
Or
in
there's a lot of
price.
people with trust funds.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean,
I've lived here a long time. I've seen lots and lots of that.
Well,
I guess
these,
to Rob's
these
point,
keep-
is this really having an issue of, impact on the market itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know
That's-
that until we
that's a
see the
curiosity,
numbers.
yeah.
All the energy would take town and staff to organize a program like that.
Yeah.
What is it actually doing in the real world to home prices?
Yeah, my guess in Vail is probably not a whole lot, because there's still a lot of inventory of, you know, the upper level
Yeah.
market things, so probably not as much as you would like to think. And at this rate, we're talking about if the town were to go forward with $1 million for a pilot program, you know, 8 or 10 units probably isn't really gonna make a big
I think
difference.
this is more about preserving sense of community than it is preserving houses,
Affordable housing, that's-
affordable housing.
Right.
I mean, you have to work locally to be in it, but it has nothing to do with it.
Mhm. Well, as we keep moving on, these programs dial it in a little bit more. It's been very
but
interesting.
if you look at 187 units though, at $12 million, like what that cost would be to build that now,
Mhm.
you would be at $400 million potentially.
Yeah, but you also saw that same chart saying that in the last 2 years, you've only gotten 8 units compared to,
Mhm.
right there, 4 and 4?
Mhm.
Yeah, number of units, 8 in the last 2 years.
You're still only
Compared
spending,
to, you know, when the actual market bared out,
Mhm.
nobody wanted to invest in this program compared to what it was in 17 and 18 and 19.
Well, 175 units off
COVID,
the market
post-COVID,
is a
too.
lot.
Yeah,
that's a ton compared to what you could actually build.
Mhm.
totally, yes, from a price per square on new construction, completely agree.
The lack of transactions in 22 and 23 also indicates probably that the housing affordability issue got much worse, so fewer could afford it
Mhm.
after the COVID bump.
It-
Indicates that. It's not
Yeah.
documented, but that's what it looks like to me.
Well, I think that's what you'll find interesting as we go over here now to Breckenridge. Breckenridge really defined a specific area in their region that they wanted to incentivize property owners on. They ended up with 2 versions of deed restrictions available. One called, they refer to as the light deed restriction, which is basically the RO deed restriction with no income caps, you know, no household requirements and no appreciation cap, basically an RO. And then what they call the heavy or the full deed restriction, and that includes a 3% price cap. And so with a maximum grant up to $450,000. I mean, they have a lot of money over there. They figured this out a while ago. But what it did is it gave people 2 options. You know, you really needed a lot of money, you could go all in. You need some money, you do partially there. Very, very successful. The other thing that's really intriguing about their program, besides having the 2 options, is they have been able to partner with Summit County. So on areas where, just like in Basalt, which of course it's all of Basalt really, but where they have housing that is the most expensive but the most desirable for employee housing, where things are 1.5 to 2 million, the town and the county pair up together to double down their money so that they can afford to do that transaction. So there's a partnership there, otherwise one or the other wouldn't be able to afford to do all of those bigger prices. In the end, this program was also available to existing property owners and then to people who were looking to buy homes. In the end, what's happened is that it's been so successful that they've had to stop taking applications from existing property owners and only offer it to people who are in the process of buying a house. So that's a really important distinction here of like when it's working well, it's really kind of goes a far way and they got a lot of deed restrictions down, but then they had to decide what their priorities were in creating this. So, you know, it's whether it's kind of one of those things.
And so go into the purchase of people buying. So someone puts a house under contract and then they go and say, I'm buying this house and I want to restrict it right away as part of the purchase.
So you can apply ahead of time and then you're out, you get approved and then you're out shopping because you've proven that you're employed and that you have 3% down payment for whatever purchase price you're going for. And then you're able to negotiate. What happens and what's tricky that I learned from talking with different representatives is that somebody may get approved, but then just like anybody here on the free market, you may put in bid after bid after bid, and you may be 10 properties in and not be able to close just because there's so many bids on a property. So it's really, you know, that's kind of like next level tricky.
But I don't understand what the buyer is getting to help them win the property.
Nothing. They're getting a cash infusion when they're under
At
contract.
the time of purchase, yeah.
Which helps them with their mortgage, not so much the purchase price.
So they're just using it because they don't have any more than 3% and they're trying to bring more equity to the table.
Maybe.
I guess I'm just confused on why it's so
Well,
helpful for the buyers.
yeah,
It's helpful for them to get in because there's up to $450,000 that the county's putting in,
Mhm.
full deed restriction.
But how many people get 400? That's what I'd be
Well, if
curious.
it's $1 million home, you get,
yeah.
round number, 250,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it helps them get into the house.
Yeah.
If they're giving away, that'd be interesting. Do we do
Yeah.
the next slide, the stats of that?
No,
But then it becomes a 3% cap on the purchase price of that house at the free market rate.
right.
The growth and the value, yeah.
So then let's say, then your $1 million house is now $850, and now you're 3% capped on $850.
On what?
850, you
Oh,
want
so even though
750?
So it,
$750, yeah.
they take away that price, they don't
Yeah.
even give you the full price you bought it for.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
So
the
that's
other
what
ways
we
it would
got.
just be free inventing money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like poof, magic money.
Yeah,
Um,
so there's a discount to it. That's a good question for
And that's probably why they took it off of the existing houses, because then they're taking the appreciation on their house as, you know, if you bought at 17 and your house is worth so much more now, and now you're taking
Right.
the boon on the appreciation, and you're happy to drop it down to 250,000 because you've made well of that equity.
Yeah.
It's a free HELOC.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
In this instance, would the buyer need to have any of their own? Like, would there be any requirement for them to have a certain percentage of the down payment?
Sure.
Or could they just use that for the full down payment?
No, generally across the board for any lenders that are familiar with any of these programs, the buyers need to come to the table with 3%.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my impression is that when some of these programs started, the hope was that the money would help people with the down payment. But because it's not a real estate transaction, and because, you know, the town doesn't want to write a check before you're under contract because you might get on a plane and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, it gets really tricky that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's hard. And that being said, it does take you into this other rabbit hole of that some of these programs have down payment assistance, rental assistance programs to help with that exact issue. That's a good point.
Do we not have the data on this because they don't share it, or we just haven't asked for it?
We haven't gotten there quite yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, theirs isn't published with the ease. But we'll see what we can get.
Do you know how they refilled their coffers, or if they're writing $200,000-$300,000 checks?
No, Breckenridge and Summit County both have, they have sales tax. They have like a 0.05% sales tax that goes in. They have a lot of money. They've been doing this for so long. They have something like, I think Summit County has $50 million or something. I mean, they figured it out. They've been replenishing for quite some time. It took 2 years to get that tax approved and the ballot initiative going, because I asked. So, Frisco.
None of these municipalities have real estate transfer taxes on sales over certain amounts, though, like they do up in Aspen.
The other ones did.
Someone did, because they waived it for this
Vail
program.
does.
Yeah.
It said that you're
But
exempt from it.
was that money earmarked for this program? Bottom one?
Yeah, well, well, one of the financial incentives is if you're buying a
there
house
we
and you
go.
put the deed restriction on, then you don't have to pay the real estate transfer tax.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
another
yeah, that
little,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, because the money comes from the real estate transfer tax. Why would you be charging back again to the real estate transfer?
Yeah, yeah. And so then Frisco's is the same, basically, as Breckenridge in general. And then the next slide is Eagle County Good Deeds. And theirs is just one more level of restriction with, still RO. You can do the RO or the price cap, so the light or the heavy deed restriction, you get the choices. Their incentives are just a little bit smaller, 5% for an RO deed restriction, or 15% for the full cap, and not to exceed $127,000 per incentive. I think that number has changed a smidge because on here too, you'll see it says max purchase price $850,000, and she told me that that's not necessarily true anymore either. So, because my first question was, oh my gosh, you've just ruled out all of the houses in Eagle County in this valley from participating. So that's a negotiable item there. And then just kind of going back to that idea of how Breckenridge and Summit County have partnered up to say these are really important areas and neighborhoods for us, and combining forces and getting there. I just bridged that question in general to the Housing Authority Director in Eagle County, and that would be a dream come true for them. See if their BOCC feels the same way, but I think it's a way for us to capture, houses in Cypress Village, and Blue Lake, obviously, and all of these places that are also critical. And ideally, what would happen is we would have this conversation with Picken County as well, and then you're able to potentially get properties in Holland Hills and these areas that, would help increase our odds of getting a few more homes in there. So these are that's kind of the general overview of most of the existing programs. And then on my last little slide here, it's just kind of some general questions we posed to the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, which is, should we pursue some sort of drafting of a program? And the answer was yes. But we need to do a lot more research and just kind of similar to the questions you guys had, figure out some of the impacts and the pluses and minuses. And then coming back and figuring out how much money we want to kind of float or dedicate to, I'm calling it a pilot program, because I'm certain that after 1 year, we'll want to tweak it and adjust it, and maybe we start adding more restrictions onto it or not, or designate certain areas. And figuring out that amount of money, is something that we'll back into after we figure out what the bids are for the houses at Stotts Mill, and then the matching grant requirements we're anticipating for the other two projects. So our next step is to just kind of keep researching lessons learned from the other programs, kind of outline what we think our funds available for a pilot program would be, and then just to kind of outline the priorities for Basalt. Does it make sense that this is really going towards RO deed restrictions? Should we have price cap restrictions? And kind of having that conversation in there. or maybe there's a percentage.
Is this something that would require voter approval or just council approval?
Just council, because we already have the money.
Would this be run by current staff, or would you have to hire somebody to run the program?
No, I think this could be run by current staff, because I mean, the great part about it is that we're not acquiring real estate. We're just processing housing applications. You know, do you qualify? Do you work here? And that's something that's James already does with his eyes closed.
So I have a question about some of the regulations, and this has been an issue in Pitkin County, but not so much here yet, is that if you're in deed restricted housing already and you retire into it, but you want to downsize it, are you ineligible to that program because you're no longer working?
Yeah, you know, the retirement question came up before, and that's one I need to look into, because I don't know the answer to that.
I thought Pitkin required you to volunteer or
Yeah,
something.
Pitkin County requires you to volunteer a certain number of hours.
And we have that in our guidelines for regular affordable housing, so it might make sense, you know, you could volunteer 1,000 hours a year, which is a lot.
It will come up.
Mhm,
Mhm.
for sure. I think
So
one of
there's a continual, it's an annual check to make sure you're still working,
mhm.
all that?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess one of the things that's interesting here too, is that you can, because there's not an occupancy or there's not a household size restriction. I know I keep kind of coming back to that one, but in traditional deed restricted units, you know, if it's a 2-bedroom, you're required to have at least 2 people in your household. If it's a 3-bedroom, you're required to have 3 people. Without having that restriction here, then you have the potential to have, you know, the people who have retired still in the house and then renting out a room to a music student or whoever, whatever. You know, you just have that option to rent out rooms, and that's not something that you have in the existing deed restrictions in APCHA, for example. And so that can be a little bit of a burn, because if you're buying one of these houses and you're stretched, but you know you can rent out a room or whatever, I think that's pretty helpful. The pros and cons of the flexibility, which is why I just, in my conversations with these other municipalities, is that even though we're neighbors to Aspen, we really don't have anything similar to APCHA. We don't own many units, and what we own, we don't own the property. You know, they're mixed units hidden in other buildings, so it's not like we have these things. The town's not liable for a bunch of maintenance on a bunch of properties that are aging. We just don't own that inventory. It's all been created through mitigation for other development, so it's just been kind of smart acquirement here, where we don't have a lot of risk. So,
Just out of curiosity, how does Basalt's affordable housing existing inventory compare to, not Aspen because that's a special thing, but other communities in the region?
yeah, I don't know exactly what you're trying to get at right there, but we
I'm just
have.
curious, yeah, how many affordable housing units per capita do we have compared to, say, Basalt or Eagle County, or, you know?
That's a really good question. I don't know the actual answer to. My gut tells me that we're way behind, because we've had what I would call, we've been lucky enough to have like a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing where people could afford it for quite some time. And we do have short-term rentals, but we don't have an overwhelming number. But these RO deed restrictions, Summit County shared with me that it really helps squelch and slow down short-term rental impacts on neighborhoods. So, you know, we might be able to help mitigate some of that stuff as we go forward with this.
We're at about 240 deed restricted affordable housing units when you combine the town-owned units and all the deed restricted housing that we have. So we're probably behind, obviously, Aspen and Snowmass, but and maybe behind some of the Vale area,
Super funded
Towns,
places.
Yeah, but way ahead of Glenwood Springs.
but ahead of Glenwood and potentially, I think ahead of Carbondale, but I don't know that for sure.
10% of the housing stock seems pretty good. I'm curious what sort of What's the sweet spot, what is a good number?
Yeah.
What's your schedule for this, to like officially launch something?
Well, we don't have a deadline. I think the goal here is to learn as many things from the existing programs as we can, things that have worked, things that have not. Some of the, just this whole thing about where did the 3% down payment requirement come from, and learning, you know, making sure we have lenders in the area, which I know we do because half of them are on Bach, but that'll work through the programs and do the things. So, I mean, ideally, I'll be conservative and say before the end of the year. I hope a lot sooner than that.
It's definitely the most cost-effective thing the town could do, short of building units, which is really difficult.
Yeah, I really don't think the town wants to be a developer. We have these other 2 properties, and we may get lucky and figure out ways to have other partners in those that end up taking them over from us, or partner with us on them, or something to that effect. But the goal is certainly not for the town to become a housing developer. So this is another way for people to be part of a program and do the things without us trying to build everything.
I don't think the town should be developing properties, I don't think that's public. But partnering up with Restore or Ski-Co or whoever else that needs the housing makes
School
total
district.
sense to me, and that's how you leverage those dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think whether everybody wants to or not, I think that's the way we're gonna end up going, because as our finance director says, we're sort of chasing nickels in the parking lot.
It seems like a lot of work to do if you don't have a mechanism to just refill your bucket, though, like already planned out.
So it's a good point, and Summit County, I believe, got their program started, and because it was successful with that momentum, it helped get that sales tax approved. So I think that's an interesting quandary here for Basalt is, do we need to see some results to get on board with it? I think it's hard being the neighbor to Aspen where there's legitimate or not a lot of concerns about, we don't want that to happen here. And so if we just have things that are not happening there that are really specific to Basalt, and lessons learned from other areas that aren't hugely funded, I think we might be in a place that people might want to do that. I don't know though.
Sales tax would be really hard in Basalt, because there's just not a huge retail slice here, like there is in Eagle County.
It'd be interesting to see what Whole Foods would do alone on. You
Just
just
say
put it on whole,
grocery
like,
stores.
like, I mean, like if you,
That's not taxable.
Yeah.
if,
Well, I think that's where partnering with our counties will be really helpful too. You know, there's not a whole lot we can do alone here.
Yeah, like we have no Costco.
Yeah.
True.
All right. Well, thank you for some great feedback and ideas of further research there, so.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
So the next item then is a code amendment on Town Code Section 1622 on scheduled uses and requirements on classifications of streets for setback purposes.
Yeah, thank you. Let me share my screen here, please.
James gets all the interesting stuff.
Hopefully this one is not very interesting, but. This item is consideration of code amendments to Town Code Section 8-4 to add street classifications. And the reason for doing this is that many of the town's zone districts base the front yard setback on the type of street that the property is abutting. And we have kind of 4 classifications of streets that are in those zone districts, that being local streets, major collector, minor collector, and arterial. And in the past, staff has kind of chosen the setback and the type of street on a case-by-case basis. But we've had it on our list to do a code amendment for some time to actually incorporate those street classifications for the various streets in the town code. So we've finally got a chance to kind of do that. And we thought the best place to put them was in this streets table that we already have in the code. That is basically for the type of on-street parking on the various streets, but since it has all the streets, we thought it was a good location to actually add in the street classifications here. Most of the streets in town are local streets. We identified several arterials, and those being Midland, Two Rivers Road, and Willets Lane. And then we've got some collectors as well, those being East Valley Road and as well as Basalt Avenue and Southside Drive up to the high school. But most of the residential areas are local streets, so it really doesn't impact existing houses. The C2 zone district, which is downtown here from Midland Avenue, doesn't base the setback on the type of road, so it wouldn't create any nonconformities there. And then when we were thinking about some of the other streets that are the larger arterials and collectors, they basically have PUDs on either side of them. When you think about Southside Drive going up to the high school, those are PUDs, so the setbacks are already established, so they wouldn't create any nonconformities.
What about Elk Run?
Elk Run already has its setbacks that are established through the site-specific development plans as well. So they're not based on, but Elk Run Drive is proposed as a street classification to be a collector.
And would that make any of those properties non-conforming?
It would not, because their setbacks are established through their site-specific development plan.
That's a PUD.
PUD.
What are the setback, like, what's the setback for a local? Can you just go through
Well, it
that?
depends on the zone district. Let me switch here. Get out and
Whoa.
so you can see here, these are the various residential zone districts. So for local streets, depends on where you're at, but this is R2. R2 is a local setback of 25 foot, and R2 is most of the higher property in the Hill District and the larger lots. It's also a Riverside Drive area. And then you've got R3, which for local is 20 foot. And then R3TN is different. R3TN is basically most of Homestead and part of the western part of Sopris Drive. And it's got an interesting kind of layer to it where it shows 10 foot for covered porches, 15 foot for living spaces, and kind of has a graduated setback on it. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a reason why minor collector was not used in the map? In the designation sheet?
I don't think we thought we had any minor collectors.
Okay.
We kind of had a couple major collectors, and then everything else was kind of local.
So it sounds like it's not going to make any changes, it's just going to be a clarification because.
Yeah, it's a
the
clarification. Yeah, and we've had like 3 or 4 requests for making determinations on what type of street something is in the last couple weeks. And so we've had it on our code amendment list for a while, so we've had a chance to do it.
And are these considering the future traffic changes with the known developments in place, under construction?
They are. Basically, all of the properties that have approvals are under construction or PUDs for the most There is also another two minor adjustments to the on-street parking to reflect. Let me see if I can go back to that.
It's my favorite.
And these items are kind of more for courtesy referral. Yes, these are the computers really
I
leaking
don't
out.
want to tease it. It's amazing it doesn't happen more often.
But there were also two adjustments to the on-street parking requirements. One was that on South Side Drive, we identified that parking is allowed in designated areas, which is the case out there now, and we just had something that was incorrect. I don't know what the computer's doing, but and then there was another clarification on Sopris Drive that identified that parking has to be off the roadway, which it's signed in those locations as we've proposed it in the code amendments already.
An item like this really comes up when the town is putting up, snow removal signs on streets and no parking signs and that sort of thing.
So staff would recommend having commission discussion, and then if you're comfortable, you could make a recommendation to the council.
It says here, should we open it for public comment? I know no one's in the room, but since it's,
Sure.
are there any more questions, or should I open it up for public comment and then we'll talk? So let's open it for public comment at 6:53. Are we doing the online Zoom thing, or I don't see anybody up there?
We don't have anybody waiting. If we want to give them 30 seconds or so. If you would like to make comments on this item, you could go to the P&Z agenda packet, which is on basalt.net for the February 6th meeting, and click on the link to join the Zoom meeting. So maybe another 10 seconds or so.
All right, seeing as there's no one for public comment, we'll close the public comment time at 6:54, and we can open it up for any P&Z discussion. Instead of going around the horn, we'll just freeform it. So if anybody has any comments, we can just jump in.
I have one comment, which is only slightly related to this. I think this is a great idea, just to keep the calls down to staff to a minimum, because this is what people will call about anyway. But somebody might want to tell Public Works to open the gate at Cemetery Lane on the weekends from time to time, because I think people possibly might want to go there. It's been locked a lot.
How's that related to this?
Nothing.
Oh, I thought you said it was part of it.
He's jumping to commissioner comments. He's jumping to commissioner comments.
Because it's about, the Cemetery Lane was up there,
I saw that.
and I was just there a while ago,
I
the
saw.
gate was locked.
Yes, it was.
What the hell?
Any comments or discussion items on the code amendments?
Has there been any consideration for streets that are even smaller than local? I think there's some streets in town, there's not necessarily, they're probably not the primary street for a lot of properties. But like, say Tucker Lane, is not I wouldn't even call that a local street. It's more classified as an alley.
Sure.
And so it's being lumped into something that's maybe a little more, deemed more traffic, deemed more, a larger setback than is really necessary on a street like that. So that'd be my question.
But if you're on it, I said, if you're at one of the properties on Tucker Lane, you probably, I guess they all don't. I was gonna say maybe they have, streets on two sides of the property,
Yeah.
which would change where the front yard setback is.
Your property might be the only example of that where you don't actually have. Because I think the rest of the properties that go between Tucker and Homestead actually go
All the way
through
through.
lots, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought.
And I'm part of it, like my property, for instance, was part of a subdivision, had setbacks set through that, but that might exist at other places in town, so that's why I was just.
Yeah, and I think the reason we haven't included a different street type is just because the zone districts only have 4 kind of classifications for the street types. We've got the local, the minor collector, the major collector, and the arterial. So we just kind of called everything local. So we could consider that maybe in a future amendment, but there's very few properties I think that it would apply to.
Okay.
Other comments, discussion items?
Are there any changes that someone's gonna be upset about?
I don't believe so, because we're, at least in the street classifications, we're just kind of codifying what we already do on a case-by-case basis. Related to the 2 on-street parking adjustments, they're already marked this way in the field and have been for some time. So it's not really changing anything, it's just codifying what's existing.
Then I'll make a motion to approve if that's what we need.
Second?
Second from, do you want a roll call on this one, or?
Is this
Yes, please.
an ordinance? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Great. Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Eric Vozick,
Yes.
Katie Hostetler,
Yes.
Bill Marin,
Yes.
Rob Levitt,
Yes.
Mike Horvath.
Yes.
I have a quorum, but for fun, I'll ask you anyway. Bob Kaplan,
Yes.
Finn Fairstein.
Yes.
Okay, great. Motion passes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And the last item on our agenda tonight then is commissioner comments and staff updates. And Bill's cut off after his cemetery land comments.
I've got one more. to make.
Oh. After you then.
Yeah, I want to compliment staff on this really great new rug with our new logo on it. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some trucks with the logo, and that's where the logo really shines, is on the trucks.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
That's good.
I am happy to relay, the logo update was Ryan Mahoney's project, so, and it's been exciting to see it.
My wife is on that committee and enjoyed the process and thought that it was done well.
Oh,
We
okay.
had a lot of, 3 or 4 different agencies brought in
Mhm.
ideas, and she was really complimentary of how it was done.
Oh, that's great. I'll share the compliments, thank you.
I have a question. Do you have an update on the lighting fiasco out here on Midland Spur?
So, the lights we have added shields onto 3 of the lights closest to the residents, so that the light is blocked and it's basically not illuminating in the direction of the residents. The rest of the street lights across the street and in general proximity have been turned down to 5% of illumination for the fixtures. To turn it down anymore just means to turn them off. So we know that this has been a challenge because previous to any of the light fixtures on Midland Spur, there were 0. Not even 1, there were literally 0. So we recognize that that's been a challenging adjustment. The safety protocol for any public street or area with parking of this is how the light plan was created. And the height of the lights, the brightness of the lights, and all of those sorts of things. So they meet our lighting code. And so that's the update so far.
And was there ever proof that those lights were approved?
Yes.
There was, okay.
Are they still complaining, or are people happy with the changes?
Yeah, I think it's a hard adjustment, for sure. Yeah. There's feedback about the design and those sorts of things, so.
And those same lights are going in all in
No,
town?
no,
Okay.
these light fixtures are a continuation from Two Rivers Road,
Okay.
so that we wouldn't have a 10th type of design. But the historic district over here will have a different type of light, that's similar but dark sky compliant, to the acorn lights that are out there now.
Got it.
Yeah, so a different design. Yeah.
Question, it's not the technical term, but the Park Modern expansion,
Yeah.
what is their process of finishing the lake? Do they have to do that before the next building starts, or do they have a few more that they can do?
They have a certain time limit on that, and I think it might be 2 years. Don't quote me on that, but I can look it up for you. And I had a conversation with their project manager at the end of last week, because we had some questions from Lakeside townhome residents. And they indicated that what they're doing now is they're building up dirt and material on the south side of the lake so that they can push that into the lake bottom, because they're required to make some adjustments to the contouring and the grade of the bottom of the lake, because it was originally just a pit to take materials out of. And so the slope of the bottom was significant. And so as part of their requirements, they have to recontour the bottom of the lake.
So it's not tied to any COs, it's just a time limit.
Yeah, I believe it's a time limit, but I can get you what the exact time limit is.
Okay, I have a couple of fun updates. One is the Green Team is working on improving composting throughout the community. So if you head to letstalkbasalt.net, there is a community-wide survey. I think we're also throwing it on the town's social media. It's not a scientific survey, but it'll help us get some input on if you compost, how it's working out for you. If you don't, what would help you compost, and then the Green Team will come back with some plans on that. So we hope you'll take the survey. Applications are open for sponsors and nonprofits to apply for the Wednesday night concert series. We have some incredible talent lined up for this season that I can't divulge quite yet, but you're gonna be stoked when you see it. And then along those lines, we're gonna be publishing a call to artists to design a concert poster for the event to be named, but what's being held on July 6th. And the event will include 5 bands from 1 to 9 p.m., a boat parade from the Whitewater Park past down to DeRocks Park, and lots of other fun supporting events. So, one of these mountain town fun things, but we're gonna also be putting out a survey to name the thing.
So a more updated version of River Days.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Just didn't wanna call it River
Been a
Days
while.
because I don't remember, I wasn't here when that was happening, and we didn't wanna.
What's it been, 10, 12
Battle of
years?
the Bands,
was a lot of fun.
Battle of the Bands we used to do.
I don't remember that.
Really?
Yeah, it should be something pretty cool. So that'll come back around, and you guys will start to see that.
Battle of the Bands was great. Kids loved it.
I think
Yeah.
it's fun. The Midland Streetscape project updates will be coming back out. Construction will be starting again, generically the first week of March. So if you haven't yet and you're interested, you can sign up for those regular newsletters at letstalkbasalt.net as well. And I think those are our main updates of the month.
Cool. Thank you. On that note, do we have a motion to adjourn at 7:06?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Bob first, Bill second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned at 7:06.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.